It is 7 o'clock, which means we're going to go ahead and get started with our project continuation of our project Blinky Lights, y'all. Um, so we're making a little control board. We're dipping a toe into the electronics workspace of Fusion 360 by making a small PCB that'll have a little plug that you can plug a strip of RGB LEDs or WS2812 NeoPixels, whatever you want to call them, and have a little Arduino board on here, and then make blinky lights happen, like my light show going on behind me back there, which I leave constantly running in my living room. It's kind of a fun dynamic light source for winter when we don't have any sun. It's nice to have some dynamic lighting that changes like a sunny day, or like the aurora borealis that I have going on behind me. All right, so we have got part two here. I'm going to go ahead and refresh where we're at for part two here. So you can see over on my left, these are all of the parts that are associated with our PCB here. So we've got our library files from the parts that we imported from Snap EDA. We've got our main document right here, which is the LED strip control component with this icon. If I double click on this, that will open up the entirety of your electronics project. So, and I'm going to go ahead and hide my parts over here. So now that went ahead and opened up 4 tabs for me. And those 4 tabs, the first one is kind of this document here that kind of shows me the schematic we made and the board layout, and then the front and the back of my PCB board. And then each individual document after this is, here's the schematic, here is the board layout, and then if I click on this little thing here, I can get to the 3D control strip right here. So that's all of our parts. Now, supposedly, Fusion gives you a way, if we're in the board, nope, if we're in, gosh, what do we have to do? If we open up the individual, this library over here with this part, now you guys don't have to do this, but supposedly I went down this rabbit hole, and Fusion, here's the device, this is that part, that is that little connector that we imported from Snap EDA. So here's the symbol for it, and then here's the footprint for it, and then supposedly you can add a 3D package, but I was unable to successfully do that. So we're going to do this the way that I have been doing it, and kind of ignore this adding 3D packages in here, because I can't make it work. And if I can't make it work, I'm not going to be able to teach you guys how to make it work. So what I am going to do is I'm going to move right into the phase of this design where we are going to add some 3D components and then make an enclosure. We may not get to the enclosure today, but we'll add our 3D components. So I've got a new document that I just opened up here. And in this new document, I'm going to create a new component. And in that component, we're going to put our PCB and all of our parts. So, yeah. So I've got a new, if I come up here to New Design, so I can click on either the New Design Plus button up here in my tabbed workspace. Now, you may already have, I'm going to say Save. When you open Fusion, it kind of starts you with a new design. So if you've already got something up here that says Untitled, then you're good to go. And you can just start by creating a new component. So we'll create a new component, and we're going to call this component the PCB board and parts, because it's going to be that board we made and the parts that go on top of it. And then I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So now I've got that new component right over here. And let's go ahead and start by, actually, you know what? We're going to have to save this. So what I'd like to do is I would like to open up my document panel here. And when you right click on things over here in your document panel, like the LED strip control PCB, for example, we can say insert into current design. Now, it won't let us do that, and I'll show you what will happen. If I say insert into current design, it'll say errors, please save design before inserting component. So we've got to save this document. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to click save, and I'm going to call this my LED strip control. And then I'm going to save that in my LED strip control project that we made at the beginning of last class, and go ahead and say save. And now, this time, when I go ahead and right click on the LED strip control 3D PCB, now I'll be able to insert it into the current design. Now, the default for insert is it gives you a place to move and shift that around. We don't need to do that in this case because we're building everything around this. But just know that you can move this to wherever you want to. If you're inserting this into a current design that has other stuff already in it, and you need to place this, you can do so with these arrows here, and you can rotate it in any of the 3 axes and get it all placed where you need it to go. But for us, we're just going to go ahead and say OK. All right, so now we've got our PCB board in here, but we need parts. And usually in this class, we would spend time measuring things and then modeling them in detail. Like I'd go ahead and get one of the parts that I've got. I have these little B3BPH, these JST connectors. I've got them, and I'd spout off measurements to you, and we'd type them in and do drawings. However, there are occasions where you should just use the parts that somebody else did for you, and maybe this is one of those occasions. So in the chat, I am going to go ahead and add links to a couple places we're going to get parts from. So here's the first one. This is for a place called Snap EDA. And when you use that link, similar to how we did the first time, so when you go to the link, you might come up on this 2D model section. We'll want to use the 3D model section up here. And now, if we scroll down, there's a download 3D model option right there. Now, you'll have to be signed in probably in order to do that, but it's going to download a step file for you. And I'll give you guys a second to download that file. And once that file is downloaded, then we just need to upload it again. So it's kind of counterintuitive. Fusion 360 lives in the cloud, so you're not really importing things into Fusion 360. I guess you can open them but I probably don't recommend that. The way to go about doing it is um, over here in your document panel, where we can see all of our files associated with this document here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the upload button. And now I'm going to choose to select the files. So I'm going to select the files, or I guess I could drag and drop them. So if you've got your folder open in your downloads folder or wherever it stuck those, you can drag and drop them here. But I'm going to go ahead and upload them. I'm going to select the file, select that model that I just downloaded, that step file. And now I'm uploading it to my LED strip control, which is this project, this LED strip control project that we made last week. And I'm going to go ahead and say upload. Go ahead. It's actually directly above your document panel here. There's a blue upload button. Ah, you get the dual computer thing going on. It's important. It's important to download on the right computer. And then once you've uploaded that to Fusion 360, then it'll say complete in the little status bar. So once you start uploading it, it gives you this little job status, and then once it finishes uploading, you get complete there. And then I can close this window. And now I see that model is over in my documents panel over here. Were you guys able to download? How did we do there? Harold, you good? Okay, good. Right on. So once you do have it downloaded, we just have to insert it into the current design like we did before. So something that's important to note here is I've got my PCB board and parts component as my active component here. So because when I add these parts in, they're going to come in as components, just like this LED strip control PCB came in as a component. And I want them to be components inside of my PCB board and parts component, and not like in my main document component up here. So having this little radio button checked next to the PCB board and parts makes sure that when I insert into current design, it puts it inside of this PCB board and parts component. So when I go ahead and click on this insert into current design, now I've got my little, I don't know, widget, let's call it, my little move and rotate widget, and I can move and rotate it into position. So the correct orientation for this particular part would be like this. And we just have to kind of line that up over where it needs to go. And, you can use the navigation cube, like I can look top down here, and now I can see that this is certainly off. We'll probably have to move this, give it a little nudge after the fact, because what I should have done, actually, I probably can still do this. These little black pads that I'm seeing here, I want to turn those off. And I'm going to turn those off by spinning down the arrow, the triangle next to the LED strip control 3D PCB. That's a mouthful. And now there are a bunch of components inside of that. I'm just going to turn off the visibility on the packages. The packages are the little fake files it makes for you. And now I can see through to the pads that are underneath them. And now I can line that up really nicely with the pads. And I can look at it from the side here. And I can move it down. So it's nested nicely right on top of those pads where it will be soldered in place. Now you can't put the solder on digitally. Unfortunately, you'll have to do that by hand still, but you can lay it out. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. All right, cool. So we've got our first part placed. We're going to do that again for the Arduino board. So the Arduino board here is, I'll switch over to the chat again because I've got another file right here. This is a fantastic website. So for like occasions when you just need a part and it's a pretty standard part and you don't want to have to do the modeling yourself, somebody has probably already done that. I just put that link in the description. And I would say go ahead and don't feel bad for yourself about using parts that somebody else made. No need to reinvent the wheel. Even though, we take this class in order to learn how to do the modeling, sometimes it's nice to have a model made for you, and then you can pick up where you need to. So same deal here. We're going to download this from GrabCAD this time. So this Arduino Nano 33 IoT is what we used, and I'm just going to go ahead and say download files. This will download a zip file. So unlike the first one, the first website we used, that SnapEDA website, here we download a zip file. So before we can import this into Fusion 360, I will have to go to this zip file and there's the file that it downloaded for me. I'm going to have to go ahead and extract that zip file. So go ahead and click on extract all. You guys are all on Windows machines, right? Okay, good. I think it's different if you're on a Mac, probably, but thankfully I don't have to go down that rabbit hole. All right, so now that we've extracted that file, it exists in amongst a pile of other files with this particular board here. And I'm just squinting at this, looking to figure out which is the one we actually need to import. I think it's this STP file. That's what I'm guessing. So let's go ahead and try that. I probably should have done this before class. I know I've imported this model into Fusion before, so it may not be this exact link, but now we're going to do the same process. So we're going to open up our file browser here in Fusion. I'm going to go ahead and click on the upload button, and then I'm going to find that file. I'm going to say select file. It's in this folder, and I believe the one we want is this one right here that for me is labeling as an, I don't know, it's got a weird Internet Explorer logo on it. But it's the largest file. Yeah, it's definitely the largest file, and it's also an STP file, which I'm pretty sure is a modified step file. So if I say open, and now I gotta say upload. Hopefully, if it gives me a 3D preview, then we know we did it right. And if it does not give me a 3D preview, I'm kind of looking at my little spinning wheel over here, spinning ball. It says complete, although I'm not seeing a 3D preview. Hey, there we go. Now we got a 3D preview. Okay, cool. So it was indeed that STP file that we needed to download and then upload. And now we can do that same process. So I've got my PCB board and parts component as my active component. I can right click on that and then say insert into current design. And now I believe the orientation that we have this is with the USB port facing away from our JST connector here. So if I go ahead and click top here, I can move this in, kind of line up the holes. So I'm looking at these mounting holes that it gave us that will be superfluous. And now I can move it into place horizontally or vertically. So it gives us increments based on how far we zoom in. So if I zoom in further, I think it'll give me smaller increments. Yeah, it will give me smaller increments. So here I'm able to just make it connect. But if I zoom out, I go too far. I'll zoom out further just to kind of really illustrate that. So it kind of gives us bigger steps. A way you can get around that if you don't want to zoom in is you can grab this little box here, and if I click and hold, click and drag on this box, it'll move without snapping, so it doesn't snap to any particular point, any particular increment, I should say, and I can move it more freely. So if the snapping is getting in your way, then you can move it that way. All right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay. Doesn't that look nice? We got our board all populated. This is probably a good time to save since we, did a little bit of work here. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. And we've got our components out here, and we've got our board. And now the only thing we need to do here is to design an enclosure. And let's go ahead and do that. We're making good progress, I think, this time around. And that's what we're in this class for, is to model some stuff. So we can finally get to the modeling here. Now that we're done with all the electronics, let's go ahead and model an enclosure to go around the outside of this. So I am going to go ahead and switch back my active component to my LED strip control component here. And I'm going to do that just by hovering over the LED strip control main document component and go ahead and click on that radio button that appears next to it. And now, you know what? I think I'm going to make a new component for my enclosure. Maybe this is unnecessary, but I'm going to do it anyway. We could just start modeling our enclosure right here, but we've got our PCB board and parts in a component, and maybe it makes sense to have a separate component for the enclosure as well. So I'm going to go ahead and from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose New Component. I'm going to call this new component. The name of this is going to be enclosure. I'm going to make it my active component, and I'm just going to say OK. Now, if this is new for you, you see a ghost of a lot of stuff here. So because our active component is this enclosure, uh, nothing is in it, it's empty, and the other parts live in this other component, and that's why we can't see them. So you can only see as fully opaque models parts that are in the component that is currently active. So because our PCB board and parts component is not currently active, uh, and the component that is currently active has no parts in it, has no sketches or bodies, everything is ghosted out here. So we're going to solve that problem by making stuff inside of this enclosure component here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create, and I'm going to create a sketch. I am going to rotate around to the bottom of my model. And if I hover over this model, I can choose as a surface to draw this sketch on. I can choose the bottom of my PCB board. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw this sketch on the surface that represents the bottom of my PCB board. It's kind of hard to tell when everything is all ghosted out, but if I hover over it, I can kind of see a grid view that aligns with that plane, and I can click on it, and now I spin around to look straight up, I guess, at my part. Yeah, 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 I would go with capture. Whenever you get that little pop-up that says, hey, do you want to capture the position of everything? It's because we use the move tool, and it just wants to make sure that you want to start from where things are at currently versus where they used to be at. Uh, Sometimes I get that dialog box and sometimes I don't, and I'm pretty sure it has to do with the move tool, but I guess I can't confirm that because it seems to pop up sporadically. But I always choose capture current position whenever that pops up. So, all right, cool. So now we've got our sketch here, and we've kind of already got some geometry that we're going to go ahead and use. Because we're creating that sketch on or on a surface. So this surface that I'm hovering over, when I hover over it, you can see it highlights. And it's because it's already kind of an enclosed, we've already got some shapes without drawing shapes, like I said, because we created it on an existing surface. And because of that, we can use the existing geometry to make our box or make our enclosure in part at least. So if I choose from the modify menu, if I choose this offset option and I hover over the edge of this surface, I can make a little offset here. Now, the first offset I'm going to make is a little tolerance. So I want to give a little bit of space in between my box and where the walls of this uh, enclosure are going to start on the inside there. So I'm just going to make it like 0.05, which is way too much. 0.025 will be plenty of little breathing room, just clearance for our PCB to fit inside of this box here. And then I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to do that command again because that offset we made is going to be the inside wall of our enclosure. We're going to do that again to make the outside wall of our enclosure. So from the modify menu, I'm going to again choose this offset, and I'm going to offset the exact same lines that I did the first time. Something to note again is if I try to offset from something that I've already offset. So I can't create an offset from that offset that I just made. For some reason, it says like, hey, one or more of the curves has already been offset. So you have to start from the original. And I want to make my box 2 millimeters thick. So I'm going to make it 2 millimeters, and then I'm going to add, you know what, we should stick in English here, I suppose. I'm going to make it 1/8 inch thick, and I'm going to add that offset, which was 0.025. So what I'm doing here is I'm making sure my box is 1/8 of an inch thick, but I already offset 1/8 of an inch, not 1/8 of an inch. I already offset 25 thousandths here. So we need to add that 25 thousandths to our 1/8 of an inch, so we make sure we got our walls are 1/8 of an inch thick. 1/8 of an inch is probably a little bit beefy for this, but that's all right. We want to have a nice strong box, right? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. Now we've got some box walls here. So if I move around, so we're looking kind of at the top of our part, I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. And now we've got a sketch to name. So I'm going to spin down my sketches folder, that thing called sketch 1 on the inside of that folder. This is going to be the bottom. And from that sketch, we can go ahead and extrude some sidewalls. So from the create menu, I'm going to go ahead and say extrude. I'm going to choose those, that ring, I guess we could say, around that we just made with our 2 offsets. And I'm going to extrude this up. Now, I want to go up, but I want to go up just high enough. So if I want to go up just high enough, we need to have our connector be exposed here or be able to be plugged into. So I want to go up the height of that connector and no further, because we're going to make the rest of it from there. So instead of choosing an extent type that is distance, I'm going to choose an extent type that is to object. So in this object window, now I can choose the object that I want to go up to. And if I hover over the top surface of this connector, either one of the top surfaces of this JST connector, then it'll go right up to that. And now here too, I want to have just a little bit of clearance, right? So I can add my offset. So I can add just a little bit of offset clearance. Again, 25 thousandths, 0.025 is going to be just my little bit of clearance there for that connector to breathe a little bit. I'm making it a new body, and I'm going to say oakley dokley. All right, we've got a bodies folder, and because I like keeping up with naming, we're going to go ahead and look inside of that bodies folder, and we're going to name that body. This is the box. We're making a box. All right, now from the top of this, let's go ahead and make the top of our box. So from the create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose to create a sketch again here. And this time I'm going to create the sketch on the surface of this, the top surface of this box, so the top edge here. And again, because I'm choosing to make that surface, to make that sketch on a surface, I've got some kind of built-in geometry here. So the only thing that we need to add in here is our opening for our JST connector. So in order to do that, we can project that geometry, that kind of three-dimensional geometry, onto this two-dimensional surface. So from the Create menu, if I go ahead and choose from the Project Include option, the Project option, it's also the P key on the keyboard. I find myself using Project a lot, so this is a useful tool to know. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Project here. And then here's an occasion where when I'm sketching, I find it helpful to look at a little bit more of a three-dimensional view. Even though we're making a two-dimensional object or two-dimensional sketch right now, I find it convenient to look at this three-dimensionally and then figure out which surface I need to highlight in order to make a nice sketch. So if I choose this surface here, I get a lot of weird geometry here. There's a lot of weird points that pop up, but if I hover this line, that appears to be a nice projection point. And I don't need to make a complete box here. Really, if I just get opposite corners of this on my sketch, then that'll be enough for me. So because I've got this line here that's got two corners here, if I just get one of these opposite corners, so I can either choose just to pick that point and project that point up, or I can project up this whole line. So either one of those gets us to where we need to be here, and kind of creates the geometry, the references for the geometry at least that we'll need. And once we've got those points or lines selected, I can go ahead and say OK on that project window. And now I'll go ahead and look top down again. And now I can connect the dots on this rectangle. So from the Create menu, I can go ahead and choose Rectangle and then 2-point rectangle. And I'm going to place the first corner of my 2-point rectangle on one of the corners that I have an opposite corner from. So I've got all 4 corners. If you don't have all 4 corners, you need to make sure that you have opposite corners when you're making your rectangle. Hopefully that makes sense. So now we've got our box selected here. Now I'm going to give this a little bit offset too. We want to give a little bit of extra breathing room for our connector. So if I, from the Modify menu, choose that offset option again, I'm going to offset this again like that, just 0.25. Give it a little breathing room, and then say OK. And now I'm going to say Finish Sketch. All right, now I'm going to zoom out on my part, and we can go ahead and extrude the top of our box here. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose this Extrude option. And I'm just going to pick the big open area that represents the, I guess, top of our box and this little sidewall here. So the sidewalls and the interior space there, we're just going to extrude that up 1/8 of an inch, which is our thickness of our box that we kind of decided on. And join is going to be okay for us because the only thing that this is touching, the operation here being set to join, will work just fine for us because we're the only object, the only body that this extrusion is touching is the sidewalls. So having that join is just fine, and I'm going to say OK. Oh, you know, we had a sketch to name, and I totally missed naming it, so I'm going to name that sketch now. That sketch was for our, I guess it's the top, but I'm going to call out that it's got our JST connection on it. So if I'm ever in the future looking for like, oh, hey, I need to change something about that JST connection, I know that it's on this top sketch. All right, so now we're almost done here with this enclosure. We've got an opening to plug in our LED strip here, but we do not have a way to plug it in. So there's a USB jack right here on the side, and that's going to be the power for our Arduino board and for the LEDs within. So I'm going to go ahead and spin around so I can see that side of the box. If you're curious on which side it is, you can always toggle the view, the visibility of that body in your bodies folder in whichever component you've got it in there. And I can see that my um, micro USB plug needs to be on this side here. So I'm going to go ahead and create one last sketch. So I'll click on create and then create sketch. And now I'm going to create that sketch again on this face of our box here that has the micro USB side on it here. I got one of those messages. So I didn't move anything. So I guess I don't know what causes these boxes to pop up. I can see I've got like a capture position icon that kind of pops up here in the top right corner. This kind of comes and goes. So I don't know why this is doing this. This is weird. But I always choose capture position because like what I'm looking at is what I want it to be. So I always choose capture position. I don't know why you would want to revert. I'm not sure what it would revert to. Um, so this is a mystery for me. This has only been happening for the last maybe 8 months. This is like fairly newish. So, and again, maybe I'm doing something different that I haven't been doing in Fusion previous to 8 months ago, but I don't remember this previous to a year ago or 8 months ago. This is a new thing. So, but I always choose capture position, and then it like does a compute. I'm not sure what it's computing, but anyway, so um, I'm sure nobody who pays attention to Fusion 360 or nobody from the Fusion 360 team watches these videos. But man, if they did, that would be top of my question list for sure, because it's a weird thing. All right, so now we're going to use that same procedure. So we've got our enclosure sketch started. That's going to be the opening for our USB plug. In order to see that USB plug, I'm going to have to turn off the box body. So I'm going to have to turn off the visibility on my box just by clicking on that little eyeball there. And from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Project Include option and then choose Project. Now here again is an occasion where everything is ghosted out, so it becomes very difficult to see what it is you're projecting here. So take your time, um, rotate your view around. I find like if I do a little bit of rotating on my view, I can kind of get my mind to see the way things are working in three-dimensional space here. And I just have to find the edges of my USB plug here. So if I just find opposite corners, again, I can create the geometry by drawing sketches if I find opposite corners of this USB plug here. So for me, I'm going to choose these two curves, and that projected some purple things way out here, but I'm going to kind of change my view here so you guys can see. I'm choosing the front edges of my, I guess the outside front edges of that front of that USB jack. And again, we just need opposite corners here. And then I can say OK. And now I'm going to look kind of head on at the front of this, and I can see my purple lines. Um, here's another occasion too where toggling things on and off is useful. I can see I've got purple projected lines here, but like there's just so much else going on here with all these other ghosted out components that I'm going to go ahead and turn off that component that is the PCB board and parts. I'm going to turn off the visibility on that. And now it's really clear. I can see my projected lines here. So those edges of that USB port. And I'm just going to go ahead and make a rectangle that encompasses this. So I'm going to click on create and then rectangle and then 2-point rectangle. And you know what? I'm going to make my rectangle because I've got my center points here. Actually, I wonder if we can do this. You know what? If I make a line that goes from center point to center point, now, let me find a USB cord. And calipers would be super handy. There's my calipers. All right. Remember what I was saying? Normally we'd be busting out my calipers and I'd be measuring stuff and spouting out measurements to you. Turns out we're doing that after all. All right. So the reason I've got this line here is now I've got a center point. So if I click on this line and I change it from a regular line to a construction line, we do that because it's just for reference for us. So now I know the center of this line because I can snap to it as like a default thing. You can snap to an endpoint. You can snap to the center point of a line. So that means I know the center point vertically and horizontally on my USB jack. So if I choose from my create menu, I can choose to make a center rectangle. And now if I hover over what appears to be the midpoint of the line, I get the little blue triangle that pops up there. And we're going to click to place the center of our rectangle. And now I'm going to move my mouse out. And now I'm going to measure with my magical calipers here. Our rectangle is going to be 0.41 inches wide. And that'll give us just a little bit of clearance. If it's actually, you know what? Let's make it 0.42. So 0.42. And then my height of this particular USB plug that I have, and this is a pretty beefy plug, my height is going to be 0.32. And again, that gives us just a little bit of clearance. So I'm going to hit the tab key. It's going to be 0.32. And again, this is a pretty beefy micro USB plug, but it'd be a bummer to make this not big enough for your USB plug to plug into. So that's when you print things out and then go, well, I guess I'm printing that again. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click enter. And I'm going to choose finish sketch here. And now I can turn back on all those things that I turned off. So I'm going to turn back on my PCB boards and parts component. I'm going to turn back on my box body. And then I'm going to extrude. So I'm going to choose create and then extrude. And I'm going to extrude inwards. And you can see as we go in, as you know, that we cut away. It defaults the operation here from join or new body to cut. Something we don't talk about much is you can spin down this objects to cut option here. And if there are more than one body, you can choose which bodies it cuts from. I guess you can't cut in, you can't cut away a component that is not currently active, so maybe that's a good thing. But just know that that's not a thing you can do. If you want to cut away from other components, you got to make those sketches in that component. And I'm just going to say okay. And now we just need to make the bottom of our little board here. So actually I've got a sketch to name. So let's go ahead and name that sketch. This is our USB opening. All right, so we've got our USB opening. We've got our box there. Let's make the bottom of it. So we can do that pretty easily with geometry that already exists. So on our bottom, let's go ahead and turn that sketch on again. And I'm going to go ahead and extrude from that sketch. So I'm going to choose create and then extrude. I'm going to choose the innermost ring there. So everything except for those 4 circles. That's a little weird. So something has shifted in my, a part has shifted. You can see how, so I've got these little circles here. This sketch was originally created right on this PCB board. So somehow this did move, and maybe that had some, maybe I moved something accidentally. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this recording because I don't think I hit the move command. Anyway, we're gonna move on, and we need to include this little offset area. So we actually have 3 little bits we need to click on. So it's the interior part, it's this little offset, and then it's this outer edge, because we want it to be a full bottom, with the exception of these holes, which will be our mounting holes. Our part will still fit in there, even though, oh, but mine has moved now. So now my USB is going to be wrong. That's unfortunate. Well, I'm going to extrude out the bottom, and I'm going to make it 1/8 of an inch, just like the rest of it. This, however, is going to be a new body. So I'm going to go ahead and say new body, and then say okay. I'm going to name this new body. This is the bottom. And now we need a way for that new body, for that bottom to mount. And I think that the way we can do this is by making screws. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and call it for this class. So we've got our box made here, and we're coming up on the hour mark. The reason being said is that there's a new tool that I want to use, and I don't want to short the new tool. There's a new tool that came out. It was released in last month's class, and now I can't even find it. It's like there's a snap fit tool for making snap fit enclosures, which is totally what we want. But now I can't find it. And like I said, but I don't want to short it, so we're gonna do it next class. We'll make the snap fit part of this box, and we will also make our box look pretty, because right now it's It's kind of just an ugly square, ugly cube, and we can do better. We'll make it look nice. We'll add some detail on the outside, and make it look not so utilitarian, because this is for blinky lights, so it should look kind of cool. And that is what we will focus on next week. Part 3, blinky light control, strip control. It's going to be fun. Do you guys have any questions about what we did in this class? Uh, Gosh, I guess I have a question though. Like, yeah, like my question is, why did my part move? Like clearly this PCB is not in the same place that it was. Like here's my sketch. That's my bottom, and you can see these holes are clearly not where those holes are. That's a weird thing, and it's frustrating. I'm going to move it back. I don't know why. I don't know why it moved. Um, but like I said, I'm just gonna move it back. You know what? Hold on. Before I do that, let me go backwards in my design history. Yeah, it hasn't. Oh, something happened there. So there, it's in the right place. There, it's in the right place. So when I made this sketch, something happened when I made that sketch right there. See, now I have to go back further than that sketch. Yeah, I don't know what would cause that. Um, did it do that for any of you guys? Yeah. Huh. Interesting. So I'm gonna move it, but now it's unfortunate because now my USB port is just not going to be in the right spot anymore. So you can see it's it's way off. It's not even close anymore. So and to fix that, I'm just gonna right click on. So if you ever want to change something, uh, I can look at this sketch, and I'm assuming when I right click on the sketch here, it's not going to move it back. It did move it back. So uh, I'm going to click capture position. And now I'm going to right click on the sketch with the USB opening. And is my board still in the wrong place? My board's in the wrong place. So I guess I'm going to move it here. I can't move the sketch here. Gosh, I'm going to do the drastic thing. I'm gonna delete some things on my timeline. So down here, this extrude, where I extruded out for my USB enclosure, I'm gonna delete that. And then this is the sketch for my USB enclosure. I'm gonna delete that as well. And I'm gonna turn off my bottom, and we're in the right spot now. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and make those sketches over again. Uh, that seems like kind of for me, that's a drastic move. Like, hold on, wait a minute. Am I really gonna, expend this huge effort of drawing this over again? I guess I am. It's not really a huge effort. It's like first world problems. It's like 0.32 by 0.42. Nope, it was 0.32 that away, and it was 0.42 that away. All right, and then now that that's in the right spot, now I'll re-extrude that. Yeah, I don't know why I got that little error, but if you have that error, that's a way to solve it by drawing something over again. All right, cool. Well, we'll see you guys next week when we make this box look prettier. Thank you, guys.